Good morning, Nevada.
Good morning.
How are you? So good to see you.
So good to see you as well. I'm doing really well.
I'm so happy. We were just sharing before we started recording that when I saw that we got to have our conversation this week, I got so excited because while we've only chatted once, it was a few months ago and I felt like we could have chatted all day. So I'm just excited to get this conversation going again. Nevada and I met through a mutual friend that we were also just talking about, Lindsay, who has been on the show as well. And promptly again found that we had tons in common and lots to talk about. And I think another great testament to how many women are connecting other amazing women these days, where it's just like, hey, you know what? You said something, or there's something about what you're talking about that feels aligned with what this woman's digging into, and you guys should meet and connect. And I don't think that it wasn't happening in my life before, but there's something about this season of life where it feels like it's happening constantly, and I just love it. So, a huge shout out to Lindsay for the connection, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, I feel like we need to say hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay. We were just talking about how awesome you are. Nevada, I think for you, let's start with the present day. So, you've been building your own business for, I think, over 20 years now,
Mhm.
if I have that right. And I'd love for you to just share a little bit about what you're focused on and what's the work that gets you excited.
Yeah, thanks. So the business that I've had since the early 2000s, which is kind of crazy to say because in my head I'm still 30 years old. Um, it's like
Absolutely.
when did I become the older person in the room, right? I liked being the younger person in the room. That was so I was that for so many years, like the
And then
young
it
upstart
changes overnight.
facilitator.
Yes, it feels like it changes literally overnight. There are times when Brian and I will be watching TV and someone is clearly like 10 years younger than us on TV and we're like, do we look like we're 10 years? I don't feel like I'm 10 years older than that person.
Right, or suddenly like we're older than politicians, like they used to always
Yeah.
be older than us, and now it's like, or like I'm the same age as the mayor of San Francisco because he went to high school with some friends of mine. So it's like, oh, I'm the same age as the
That's
mayor.
wacky.
How did
Yeah.
that happen? Yeah.
It's so real. Yes.
Um, but yes, I've had this business for 20 years. So the core business is called Lane Change Consulting, and I do corporate facilitation, organization development work, a lot of team development work, and then also something called graphic facilitation or graphic recording, which is live visual note taking. So people might have seen that, people drawing in real time, kind of drawing out a conversation. So there's an illustration part of that, but it's also really supportive of helping groups see the conversation they're having to make
Hmm.
progress. So I kind of blend all of those things together. And then I also work with the Enneagram with
Hmm.
teams and then also individuals in my individual coaching to support team development.
I,
Yeah, yeah.
that's so, I mean, what a cool combination, like an ecosystem and body of work that all support each other. I'd love to hear. I have been a part of facilitated meetings and conversations where graphic facilitation and illustration was part of it. And I remember just being absolutely floored the first time I saw it being done because there's something so interesting about what's happening in the mind of the facilitator slash artist or whoever's actually capturing the imagery. What got you into that specifically? I'm so curious if you saw it and thought it was amazing, or was it something that just kind of evolved throughout your work?
Mm. Yeah, I remember actually it happened. There was a very specific moment where I realized that was a thing and I could do that thing. So
Yeah,
I'd been,
that's the best.
it was so good, right? Like you can actually, I can think back. I know exactly the moment that I realized organization development was actually a field. Like I remember
Hmm.
hearing a conversation and I was sitting in an office. I was working as a sales assistant at this company in like 1998, and somebody came in and was talking about, oh, we're having these consultants come in to interview everybody about how the team is doing.
Yeah,
I was like, wait a minute. They're in your, like, they get to talk about how the team is doing. That's the only thing at work I'm interested in.
so
I
funny.
said, well, what are
Yes.
they? They're like, oh, they're organization development consultants. And that was like, something went
Hmm.
off in my head. I was like, oh, I can do that. I want to do that. So that happened in 1998. And then a number of years later, after I'd gotten my master's in organization development as working change at a biotech company, a woman was in a room and Now I know that this was Emily Shepard, who's an amazing graphic recorder and now a friend. She was in this room, and all the walls of the room were papered.
Hmm.
And she was having people come in and ask them questions around some project and what they wanted to see in this project. And she was illustrating what they were saying on the walls of this room. And I had that same moment of like, what? Yes, that. And that led me down the path of taking some foundational classes. And that was 21 years ago. And I remember that because my daughter was a baby and she's 21. And yeah, and really just, I did that 10,000 hours thing that Malcolm Gladwell talks about. I got obsessed, spent a
Hmm.
lot of time getting good at it. And I just knew it was like the somatic response of like, yeah, that.
It's so
So
interesting.
yeah, I've been doing that work
Yes.
for 20 years, which is crazy.
That's incredible. What do you think? I mean, there's so much there. A part of me was thinking about, we were chatting earlier about how I have a 10 and a 7-year-old, and I find myself bucking against, even though I still do this to them, even though I shouldn't, the like, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? Because that's such a like natural thing that you do at that age of what, and I think what we're trying to ask them is like, what's interesting to you, and what are you, what are you seeing that gets you excited, and what are the
Mm,
big dreams? But it's like they haven't even seen, what's out there yet, right? Like, because I think we can kind of narrow things down so early on just based on what you have seen as a possibility, and to know that, we can still witness things later on in life and go, oh, wait a second, I didn't even know that was an option. Like, no one told me that. You can't study that, or maybe you can, but it's not something that most folks would have even been aware of at a younger age, even going into like college, let's say, age. Were you always like kind of tapped into that side of yourself? Because you're saying you had a spark and noticing something and saying, oh, I want to follow that a little bit. Was that always kind of natural to you to see something and know that you felt drawn to it and then actually follow up on that interest? Because I think, so many times we were talking earlier too about how fast life moves and how
mm,
quickly things are going. Sometimes it can almost be tricky to notice that, first
mhm.
of all, and then actually create the space to do something about it.
Yeah, I love that question so much because it ties in actually to this work I'm doing with my midlife circle and this sort of women's circle that I lead. Because part of this is, I think, this tuning into yourself and your body's wisdom. You can call it your intuition or your body's knowing about kind of what's what your life is calling you towards is kind of the thing that I've always had some kind of connection to, even as a young person.
Mm.
And then I think kind of lose it or we get really busy and we tune it out, like you're saying. And then we sometimes have to come back to learning what that feels like again or how to notice it in ourselves.
Hmm.
Because it is kind of like a soul response. It's like
Yeah.
a body soul response, however you want to think about it in your own language. But there's like that's to me the spark of purpose. So when
Hmm.
everybody's looking for purpose and let me like do a purpose workshop and find the right words, I'm like, yeah, okay, okay,
Yeah.
great. That helps you. And also, it's actually tuning into your body about that spark and being able to
Hmm.
listen to that spark. What are you curious about? What does your body respond to? What is that that heck yes, that full body yes that you have? All of
Yeah.
those are pointing towards purpose. And
Mm.
so there's been many moments in my life where I've had those responses, a couple that we've talked about. There were things when I was younger that were just like, and then I happen to have that constitution that's a little bit like I have a lot of self-efficacy to go after stuff
Yeah. Yeah.
and maybe a little bit too single-mindedly, or yes, to then actually like be like, I know I can do it and let's get on board and get it done. Yeah.
Yes, that's so cool, because I think hearing that a lot too recently with women I either work with or chat with in this context of the wanting to kind of almost get to know themselves again.
Uh-huh.
And I felt that so deeply over the last 3 years in my own kind of latest evolution, and almost kind of being surprised every once in a while, like, oh my God, like I forgot about that thing over there. Or that was something that was so interesting to me. I wonder if I'm still excited by it, and giving ourselves permission to actually spend a bit of time there. It can feel hard, right? Because what we were talking about earlier too, like a lot of sandwich generation, people that are raising kids and caring for, aging parents and work and.
Mhm.
So to like give ourselves that moment can be, it can be tricky. And I wonder if you're finding with the women in your circle, is there something about being in community with each other too that's helping them kind of give themselves that permission and hearing other people talk through some of what they're looking at?
Totally. The circle part of it, I think, is so important. Okay, before I answer that, though, I am curious. What is something you've remembered you like or discovered now you like or that you
Mm.
weren't aware of?
Oh gosh, question back on me. Rude. No, I'm kidding.
Rude.
Gosh, I think one thing that is not surprising to literally anyone else in my life is how drawn I am to anything ethereal or woo or,
Mm,
anything related to other planes and existence and, thinking more deeply about what it means to like be in this present moment today. And I would, give a lot of disclaimers before, like, it was going to sound really woo, or, "Ugh," and my husband at some point was like, boo, like you've always been like, why are you just now making it sound like this is something that you are somehow interested in? Like, this is, I'm like, I think it's just because I'm more conscious of it now and I'm
mhm,
seeking it out more intentionally versus just kind of being an observer of it.
mhm.
And so I think that's one. And then I think the other part is I forgot how much I love, this is going to sound really silly, but like just creation in general. Like, I think we've talked about this. I was an art major
Mm,
and I loved that level of getting my hands dirty and creativity and building things. And while my career has had some version of that involved throughout the years, the sitting down to write, the, doing this podcast, all of those things have now become a new creative outlet for me that, yeah, I kind of had forgotten about or let lay dormant, I think, for a long time.
yeah, it's so beautiful. And I can really relate to that. There's like, because I do a lot of work around midlife, I'm sort of using that frame of kind of first half of life, second half of life. But there is sort of
Mm-hmm.
that part where, the first half of life is often about performing productivity
Yeah.
and there's another P. What did I want to say? Well, like proving. There's like a proving part
Yes.
too, right?
Yep.
So there's sort of like, and I think it's really natural that we go out in that first part of life and it's like, okay, I have to go prove that I can do it in this system, in this context that I was born into. Let me just go prove that I can make it, right? And then we can forget about this actually deep part of our internal life that has a calling and that's probably always been there. And I did the same thing where I sort of over-indexed on those three P's in like until my
Yes.
early 40s.
Mm.
And then it was like this wake-up call in my 40s, like, oh, that is not going to be enough. That is not it. That is not hitting the mark of like who I actually am as a human.
Yes.
And so in comes that midlife transition, the waking up to kind of who we really are, starting to claim our actually inner wisdom, who we are as women, not
Mm-hmm.
just as productivity machines in this system that we're in,
Yeah.
and then refinding kind of our inner woo,
Yes.
which is not even woo, right? It's like it's
I
actually the real
know.
stuff. It's the actual,
That's
it's
what's I know. I'm reading. Have you read Imagine That?
no.
I'm gonna oh, it's a beautiful book. I'm reading it right now. And I'm gonna totally screw up her name, so I'm not gonna even try. But it's something similar to this idea that we think of imagination sometimes as this kind of frivolous like thing on
Mm,
the side, but ultimately it's like the foundation of human existence and how, creation happens and how we can see our way out of really challenging, difficult times in life. And I really love what you just said around how natural it is to be in those three P's for a season of life because sense, and I think I felt this myself for a while and I had to really let this be okay, that there was almost a level of regret for a
hmm
minute when I started to look back and go, wait a second, what was I doing that whole time? Like, why? And I really appreciate that you're saying out loud that it doesn't have to be that that was quote unquote bad or a mistake or, that we've lost ourselves forever. It's sometimes that is a necessary piece in order to get us to the place that we want to be in order to start asking some more intense questions of ourselves. And I don't know that I've heard anybody say it like that. So I think for anybody listening that's maybe in that moment going, gosh, like maybe kicking themselves a little bit, like, why did I
Mm.
do that? It's okay. And it's also what society has asked of us for a long time. And it also doesn't mean that we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying, oh, all of that crap didn't matter. No, a lot of that stuff you get to still carry forward with you. It's just that now we get to be a little bit more intentional about what pieces of it that we still want to carry and maybe what isn't serving us any longer.
Yeah, that's so good. And I want to underline something you said around the regret. And there are, like, when I'm working in my own life and then also in working with women at midlife, there is some grief that comes up, right? Like there can be
Mm-hmm.
grief about the parenting that we might have done when we were
Mm.
still in that real proving performance productivity part of
Sure.
life, right? Like I think I'm a very different parent now to my kids than I was then. And sometimes
Mm.
I have grief about, where my focus of attention was, even if I actually had built a business that gave me a good amount of time with them. A lot of
Yeah.
my focus and attention was on my own success
Sure. Yes.
and not listening in the same way that I have the capacity to do now, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, take a little bit of solace in the fact that one of my teachers said the best work you can do for your children is to do your own inner work.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
then also to
Yeah.
know that you can always repair, right? Like the relationship is constantly evolving.
Mm.
And I have so much more intimacy now in my relationship with my kids. Of course, they're now young adults, but it's like we have a chance to evolve that. I'm grateful that that's possible, if that makes sense. So there's a
Yeah.
grief about how it was, and also a recognition and a compassion that we can always change those
Yes.
relationships with our children and others in our lives.
Totally. I love that. I wonder how much, you mentioned the Enneagram and, was that has that always been part of your work, or is that something that you have kind of come to as you've started to peel back some of the layers even for yourself? How do you see that playing specifically in this moment, right, for the women that you're working with at this kind of midlife
Hmm.
season?
Yeah, I love the Enneagram. So I picked up an Enneagram book when I was 13 years old.
Mm.
It was sitting, I remember it really clearly because I used to go to this place called Tassajara, which is it's a part of the Zen Center that I grew up in. So I would go there in the summers, and I remember being at the pool, and there was this Helen Palmer book around the Enneagram. And I picked
Mm.
it up, and I'm reading through the 9 types. I knew right away that I was a type 3, even at 13. But I,
Wow.
but I didn't want to be a 3. I wanted to be a type 7, which is
That's
the,
always the thing. Nobody wants their number.
no,
I have literally never met anyone that was like, except for an eight. Sometimes a lot of eights are like, yeah,
yeah, right on.
I'm an eight.
It's so
Yes.
true. It's so true. And I
Shout out
remember,
to my eights, by the way. Many of my besties are eights, so
yeah,
I love you.
we thank you for your intense work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, and for those that don't know the Enneagram, the 3 is the goal-oriented achiever, this very sort of goal-oriented, success-driven person, and then the 7 is this enthusiastic, visionary, spontaneous, fun, positive, optimistic. So I have a part of me that's a 7, but no, my core type is a 3. So I didn't
Mm.
like it, so I put that book down and didn't look at it again until I was 40.
That's so funny.
And then it came back to me, and it kind of, a couple people were in my life were mentioning it, and I did a typing session with a friend, and for some reason, the timing of it, because it was reintroduced to me right at the midst of my own midlife transition in my early 40s, which is a really normal time if anybody's feeling that soul rumble to
Mm.
live differently and to change. That's a really common timing around 42, 43. So it was introduced to me then, and it was like, oh my Lord, it was like seeing the whole, like, adaptive strategies, all the things the game that I'd been playing was laid out to me, and I could see it really, really clearly.
Mm.
And it was like, and also to realize that type 3 has a huge heart,
Mm.
and we just never slow down to move into it and allow it and allow us to recognize that we have feelings, right? It's
Yeah.
like feelings aren't aerodynamic, is what some three sort of how they experience it, but to realize like I am actually really emotional and I was craving for more authenticity in my life, which is actually the what the three is longing for, but
Mm,
kind of works really hard and overworks for it to kind of achieve things. But really what I'm always was longing for with authenticity with myself and with other people. So the Enneagram
mm.
was like, look here, lady, and
Yeah.
had a map for how to get there.
Yeah.
And ever since then, it was like one of those. It was again that kind of soul clarity about this is something that I'm supposed to do deep study in.
Mm,
So yeah, about it's been about 10 years, I guess, in really deep study of that, and both the spiritual side of the Enneagram and then also sort of more personality type, more of the superficial side is great for in a work context, right? And there's a whole spiritual
yeah.
side of the Enneagram, and we bring both in the midlife um, circles that I lead, mostly thinking about like what's to your point about like what's no longer serving you,
Yeah.
right? What are the patterns, the adaptive strategies that are no longer serving you? And what might be the North Star that you can tune into at midlife to help you
Mm,
move beyond those adaptive strategies?
yes. I do you find, I'm so curious. I think I've heard folks have a perspective or an opinion on this. I wonder, especially at this moment that we're talking about for women, where the three P's maybe start to fade a little bit, or
Mm.
we're maybe more aware of them. And so when I took the Enneagram 6 years ago for the first time, 7 years ago, I had one number.
Ah.
And there was always something about it that I was like, like, yeah, ish, but like, I don't know that that like felt, and it wasn't even like I was bucking against it. It was more like, I don't know, this doesn't feel 100%. And then I took it again more recently and it had shifted. And it
Mhm.
wasn't like a wildly different one, but it was, I'm also now, not now a three, but that resonated way more for me. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering if not can people change? That's not the question, but can based on the season of life that you're in, can that affect, right, like how you're actually answering the questions and how it might be interpreted and how you then are kind of being a mirror back to yourself? Can that like should people take it more than once depending on the season that they're
Mm.
in,
Mm.
or is it kind of once you're that number, that's your number?
Yeah. Well, look, there's a couple questions in there that are interesting. One is like, what is personality? Does it change? Right? I think the general thinking is that your personality doesn't change over your lifetime. Of course, we can
Right.
change and grow vertically in our
Sure.
type. We can be healthier versions of our type. But essentially, if we're born in the type three, or that there's an early temperament that we're born with, and then there's some early attachment stuff that happens, and our type settles in pretty early. That
Mm,
our core type doesn't change. So I think that's the most common thinking about it. And our self awareness, of course, expands as we get older. So maybe we can answer those questions with more clarity about our underlying patterns and how we act as we get a little bit older.
mm-hmm.
I would say like by the time you're in your, you know, there are teen assessments for Enneagram type. By the time you're in your early 20s and your ego is pretty solid,
Yeah.
you should be able to answer those with a good amount of clarity if you have a good assessment, right? Or you're
Right.
working with a good coach.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I think that's the other, I think, good point is that so many of these things we do individually, silos on our own, and then we're left to read the thing, right? Different when you have somebody that's actually walking you through. I did Strengths Finders for the first time a couple years ago through a facilitated guide. And I mean, the conversation was wildly different than had it just been me staring at these 10 words that, didn't really mean anything to me at the time. So I think that's what you're getting at is really important that work and doing it with somebody that's actually as well versed on the work as you are, or somebody else that's doing a different kind of assessment. I think that having that guide makes a massive difference in the interpretation of it and kind of how you internalize it versus, it can be tricky to read about yourself in that way too.
Yeah, there's like sometimes say there's you're on the right. type, when you have that ick factor, that kind of ick response, you're like, oh,
That doesn't
yeah,
feel good. Yeah.
it doesn't feel good. Then you know you're kind of in the right territory.
That's so funny. I'd love to rewind time and thinking back to, 20 years ago. I know it's not like it was yesterday, but can you share a little bit about going from having a more traditional career and work that you were doing then, and maybe what the impetus was or what the inspiration was for you to branch out on your own?
Yeah, the inspiration, if I think back on it, what was really going on was, so I was sort of contracting at this biotech firm after I got my master's degree. And when I heard about the number of days you got a vacation as a full-time employee, I just had that response in my body is like, how does anyone do that? So I
Yeah.
had spent in my younger life, like at that point, 4 or 5 years living in Europe, where I
Mm,
had jobs and worked in different things and seen kind of the European lifestyle and how much
mm,
vacation they get off and what a normal
mm,
day looks like. And I
mm,
think that really informed my decision about not taking a full-time job at that biotech company. It was like I
mm.
just couldn't imagine do, doing that, and I also saw there was a different way.
Yeah,
And then probably that sort of confidence in myself that, like, oh, I think I can do it the other way too. I mean, this is sort of the high side of type 3. It's like, oh, I can do that. I can make that work.
totally. I know it's almost delusional sometimes.
Totally.
I got that.
I got that.
No problem.
Right. Right. And then the downside of the 3 is you kind of think you can do anything, and so you start doing like all these things that actually aren't totally aligned. But there
Yes.
is a high side, and I think that was part of it. So it was like I really was clear about wanting a family,
Mm,
and I was looking around me at what some of the moms were doing that had kids that were working the 60-hour week, and I, with so little vacation, I thought, just don't think that that's for me, and I
mm,
think I can do it the other way. So that was the
mm,
impetus, actually.
mm, hmm. And so when you decided that, I mean, was it like just so curious when you were talking about the I'll do all the things and maybe it's not totally aligned? What did it take you a little bit of time to sift through what the focus was going to be when you decided that you were going to, branch out on your own?
Yeah, and I had a really beautiful kind of nest to start the business. And I
Mm,
had a wonderful kind of woman manager that I was working with as when I was contracting that kind of saw and encouraged my facilitation skills. And
mm,
so it's like I was working for and with her in this one department, which was the kind of commercial training side of things, and we were doing sort of change work. And then people around the rest of the organization were asking me to come and start facilitating things for them.
mm,
So I kind of had this nice, like, cozy nest of kind of having internal clients when I was a contractor. So in some ways, I didn't make the decision to have the own business. It almost like started and then
yeah,
just grew from there. It wasn't like I woke up one day and was like, let me have my own business and do it on my own. It was like, oh, this is
gotcha.
actually what's emerging and makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I realized how much I liked and was good at jumping into new teams, figuring out what was going on with them, talking to them, listening, bringing them together to figure out what was next, help them
Hmm.
connect and do their work better together. So that's really how it started. And then, it just evolved and I started getting clients outside that organization. And then people would refer me, and then the kind of the referral engine built up. And that's how the business started, really.
Got it. Okay. You said something earlier that put a little bit of a highlighter on in my mind. Did you say you grew up in a Zen institute? Is that what you said?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess I just kind of dropped that in there, didn't
Yeah. It's like I don't want to make something up, but I do want to hear about that if that is in
As I
fact what
was
you
saying it, I
said.
was like, am I saying this right now? I guess I am saying this. Yeah, it's sort of it's an interesting part of my story, actually, if we think around kind of when I look back on the whole arc and actually talking about like where you start and then where you end up. So yeah, I
Mm,
was born and raised in a Zen temple, in a Zen Buddhist
okay.
temple in San Francisco called the San Francisco Zen Center. My
Okay.
parents met there, and this was, in the heart of San Francisco, so we lived there. And I went to school at also kind of an alternative school called a Waldorf school or a Steiner school. So I had a pretty alternative upbringing
Mm,
that was creative, um, you know, pretty close to the era of the hippie in San Francisco,
Yeah.
in a city that was, super urban and vibrant,
Yeah.
and I didn't have a meditation practice of my own until I was in my 40s.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah, so it was
That's
like,
fascinating.
yeah,
Yeah.
great, that's nice, this is cool, fine, these people are doing their thing, and I can go out and prove that I can make my way. And I remember
Fascinating.
when someone asked me when I was in elementary school what I wanted to be when I grew up. Do you know what I said? I said I want to be a yuppie.
Plenty of room for that given the other, yeah, dynamics of the city. That's so funny.
It's like it just makes me laugh because it's like so much of that three. The three looks around and says, okay, what does success look like here? Like, what does it
Mm,
take to be successful? And let me do that.
mm,
And but then of course, and that was kind of putting my eye on the larger culture, right? But always this piece was behind me of like knowing that sense of like a good life or has some amount of contemplation and mindfulness and inner work
yeah.
and solitude.
Yeah.
It just took me 40 years to come back to that.
That's fascinating. Did that at all, reflecting on your time there, did that at all inform the way you were raising your own kids in the education system? Like, did that impact at all the way you thought about what their education was going to look like at a young age?
Yeah, and I think about it, it's like it's one of the it's not like a regret, but I did want them to go to public school because I wanted them to
Hmm.
have that diversity that exists in San Francisco in a public school system.
Yeah.
And the public school system in San Francisco doesn't look anything like, an artistic,
Right.
mindful practice. So,
Right.
I mean, there's trade-offs that from the choices we made. And do I think that I was able to raise them with the kind of spiritual foundation that I just was granted by having been raised in a Buddhist environment? No. My husband's also not spiritual particularly, so and we weren't going to church, and so I didn't have a spiritual community that I could integrate them into when they were young.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like that was a bit of a miss, honestly.
Mm,
And I have to trust that things came through me in terms of how I live my life and what we talk about, that
absolutely.
they'll come back to, that they'll be able to find that. Right now, there's not a lot of that going on for them, but they're 19 and 21.
I
So,
was going to say they're still so young. And I mean, it can be, right? My husband grew up in a church setting and three brothers with four boys, and none of them claim that as how they identify today, right? So even if you are, even same for you, right? Like even though you were in that growing
mhm.
up, it took you, like you were saying, till later in life to find your way, to find your path to how it resonated for you. And so it's like, even if we're raised in these spaces, it doesn't mean that that's going to be what we take on for ourselves, right? And I think more importantly to what you're saying is how you are expressing yourself in the world. I think that's what they notice, right? Like we can put so much emphasis on where they go and all the rest, but ultimately it's what's the community they're part of? How are
Mhm.
we acting? How am I not being an asshole on the road every day to every driver? Because I'm really
Mhm.
bad at that. It's like my biggest lesson it will be the thing. Like maybe one day I will reach enlightenment when I learn how to get in my car and not become a total asshole.
Okay, I have to laugh because it cannot be a coincidence that you're bringing up the driving and being an asshole in the car, because the reason I knew that something had to change in my life in my early 40s was because I was a raving maniac in the car.
It's all of the stress comes out. It's like
And
that's so
isn't that funny? So I'm really taking that as like, and there were a couple of moments where I scared my kids.
whoa, okay, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not in terms of like how angry I got,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that I scared myself. And I was like, what is going on? Like, this is
Yeah.
not okay, you know? And actually,
Yes.
that was, um, it was like, if I'm getting this angry about nothing,
Yeah.
and okay, granted, there was probably some perimenopause going on there, right? But so,
That's
like,
what I'm
that's not a
blaming.
good, it's
That's
not,
my excuse.
you're welcome to it. But that was my wake up call. I was like, okay, something has to change, lady.
Yeah.
And then I started doing a lot of bumping around in the dark, looking for anything and everything that would start to create some clarity for me. I mean, I did anything from, I made a list at one point of all the different like therapeutic modalities that I went through, and like network spinal care with the chiropractor, which is like chiropractic energy work, breath work, meditation, therapy, somatic therapy, psychedelics, crystal healing, like this retreat, that retreat. I mean, just anything and everything that I thought would unlock something.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a real searching um, for like what's going on, how can I
Yeah.
fix it, yeah, it was very discombobulating and disorienting. And part of putting the Midlife Wisdom Circle together then around the time I turned 50 was in response to that. Was like, okay, how can I create a container that
Yeah.
normalizes that experience,
Yeah.
shows people kind of the map of the midlife transition to know that it's totally normal to go through some of that stuff, and also start speaking to some of the practices that we can lean into in liminality. Like when
Yeah.
we've let the younger part of ourselves go, like it's time to let that go. We're not yet this sort of next version.
Yeah.
What can we do in that middle space, in that liminal space, to find some orientation
Yeah.
to help us find our way through? So that's actually why the Midlife Wisdom Circle came to be, was going through that like really
Mm.
crazy few years in my 40s.
But I mean, isn't it wild how collectively that is such a truth, and we are all left to our own devices to try and scramble our way through the dark, right? I
Mhm.
mean, I think about, driving thing, we can joke about it, but truly, I mean, since I remember, not post COVID, but, into COVID when people started driving again. And there was literally what felt like to me, it was like the before and the after of what it meant to get in your car. And it
Mm.
truly felt like everybody's collective rage was coming out on the road. And it was like, I just remember being totally shocked one of the first times I actually had to drive somewhere a bit further. I was like, what is going on? Like,
Mm.
people, all of our nervous systems are shot. Everybody, we all just went through a massive trauma that nobody has actually said, let's all collectively heal from this. Let's just go back to like the day to day, or back to what was quote unquote normal. And when we haven't had any ability to heal from that, and then just all trying to go back into the craziness of it. And I think that's just kind of a perfect picture of just generally speaking what it means to go through midlife at times. You're just searching for what the heck is going on. And the fact that you're bringing people together in community in that way is so beautiful, because I do think that then allows us to know that we're not alone and not crazy, so to speak.
Mm.
I just posted something on Instagram, in Tempest. Terry Tempest Williams, do you know her work? I did
Mm.
not know her work prior to coming across this clip, but she talks about, someone asks her, the interviewer asks her, what do you feel like you still need to prove to people? And she
Mm.
says something about, I'm not crazy and I'm just alive. And we as
Mm.
women can tend to question a lot of ourselves. Are we too much? Are we doing too much of this, too much of that? But ultimately, it's just that no, we're all just trying to do our best in a time that feels particularly challenging, especially amidst all of the things that are going on in our world and all around us. But it also brought me back to something you said before we started recording, which was moving at the speed of connection. And that is the most beautiful thing I've heard. And you can give us more background there. But I think it all kind of comes back to that, right? That we're all moving so fast that it can be so difficult to even see outside of that. And so to have these moments where we get to sit and be a bit more intentional and say, I'm going to be in space with you, and we're going to all hold that open for each other so that we don't feel totally crazy. That was a lot about a lot. But all of those things in my mind are in one kind of space in some of what you're doing. And I'm wondering if you are seeing the women that are coming into this circle, are they able to express how then they kind of enter their world differently, right? Wonder for them just on the like day to day. I think sometimes we can look at these things as, oh, my life changed and I totally, I jumped ship and I did this wildly different thing. I think actually the subtleness of it sometimes is where the power is, just in the, I had a little bit more patience for the fact that my kid was kind of a dick this morning.
Hmm.
Like stuff like that. What
Yeah.
are you hearing from the women as they kind of navigate some of that?
Yeah, there's so many nice threads to pick up there. I think,
Sorry, I just threw so much at you at one
yeah,
in
yeah, that's great.
one
I
fell
love it. I
swoop.
love it. I mean, maybe I'll just, what strikes me as maybe important to name is that point about, what's it like to move at the speed of connection? And I just
Yeah.
want to recognize that that's a quote that I reference a lot from an indigenous teacher and elder named Ilarion Makulieff. When I heard it on, I think I've heard him say it a number of times, but I take that to mean both moving at the speed of connection with other people, which is kind of what you're pointing to, but also moving at the speed of connection with ourselves.
Yeah.
And so what I notice in that midlife wisdom circle is part of the magic of it is that women have actually just given themselves time of that hour a week for 12 weeks or 9 weeks over 12 over 9 sessions over 12 weeks to slow down. So it's like that's
Yeah.
actually half the battle is that women have given themselves that time to actually
Hmm.
sit with themselves and then
Yeah.
have that mirrored with other women is then the other piece of that. And yes, we're bringing in content about the map of midlife and the three phases of change that we all need to, that are helpful to just keep in mind as a map of separation, liminality, integration. And like at any given time, we're probably in some transitional phase where we're either in the process of separation, right? All these women out there now who are dropping off their kids at college, right? When you see this
Yeah.
videos, it's like that's a huge milestone around separation, right? And we don't tend to honor that, right? Or we're in this messy middle, or we're integrating something that we picked up and it might feel different. So it's like slowing down to be able to connect with yourself, your body, kind of your inner life is half the battle at midlife, really. It's like
Yeah.
part of my anger in the car was like, I didn't have any time to be with myself. I didn't even know who I was in a way. It was like I knew the outer persona, but I didn't know my inner world very well. But
Yeah.
that's what all that searching
Yes.
was really about. Yeah, and I think a lot
Yes.
of women are looking to get in touch with that, not at an intellectual level, right, but at a somatic level, at a heart level, right?
Yeah.
It's like people sometimes say the hardest journey you'll ever make is from your head down to your heart, and that's part
Yes.
of the work of midlife, especially for a three.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and I wonder, it feels so, it's always important and it's always been timely, but given the conversations nowadays about how the workforce is going to change so dramatically and so rapidly, and at a speed in which we can't even fathom, right? And so much of what I'm interested in right now is the folks that are saying we're not necessarily headed for an economic crisis, but a crisis of identity, because
Mm,
so many of us have spent so many years tying our worth to our output, to our title, to the productivity. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but it's okay, but what's under that? So that if things change or shift, or those of us that have had the rug pulled out from under us, right? Mine happened 3 years ago, and I don't know that I would have asked myself those questions had that not been forced upon me. And so I'm
mhm.
curious about that opportunity for people at the season of life who have spent so many years building a great career, or, being the top salesperson, or, be all the things that we can equate to our value. How do we then also say the yes and, so that if things shift or change in front of our eyes, we're more I don't know if prepared is the right word because I don't know that we can ever be prepared for cultural shifts that we're seeing, but prepared in our heart, to your point, and getting a little bit more out of our head and being centered from a place of, okay, I got this because I know myself well enough to know I can navigate or shift or pull that lever over here in order to kind of move forward through that.
Hmm. Yeah, what comes up for me is you name that. I mean, in my own experience, what was so important, um, and this the languages might feel different for different people, right? And there's different. It's sort of all pointing to the same thing. But for me, this you think about if you think there's sort of a horizontal axis about these are all things I'm doing, and I need to move forward in my life, and there's like 3D reality, and I have a job, and I have kids, and all that kind of stuff, right? And then there's like a vertical axis, which is our connection to ourselves and the divine, your own spirituality. And it's like if we're missing that vertical axis, then when that horizontal axis goes wonky,
Yeah,
it, it's even more destabilizing, right? So it's like, what are you
totally.
connected to beyond your work life? And of
Yeah,
course, vocation is so important, right? Like I love to work in the sense of like I'm really
totally.
passionate about having a vocation and my work is going to express in different ways over my lifetime, right? But if I didn't have this vertical orientation to connection to myself and some sense of a connection to something larger,
Yeah,
then I would feel very unmoored. And I see
totally.
that happening for a lot of people.
Yes, I agree. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations for maybe I can forget sometimes that now since I started down my own journey, a little while ago, that those practices that I now have or rituals I now have or these are things I didn't have even just a few years ago.
Hmm.
And that's how quickly it can shift and change. But I forget that, some folks might be just starting out with these questions for themselves or might be feeling a bit of trepidation around, well, if I allow myself that, is that going to like blow everything up? Or, there can be all these things that get in the way of actually maybe integrating some of those questions or practices into your life. If someone's thinking about that or just starting to kind of dance with it a little bit or play around the edges, is there like an easy or I don't know, like non-intimidating way that you might suggest that folks kind of start?
Yeah, for sure. And so I want to give you some of those simple tips and also speak to something that like a big midlife transition doesn't mean you have to blow your life up.
Yes,
And I just want
agreed.
to like normalize that. Like we hear a lot of stories about like I mean, and I have friends that did this. They went from being ahead of people for a fintech company and now they lead ayahuasca trips to the Amazon in Brazil, right?
Right, right.
Or
Which
they
can
were
be cool, but it doesn't have to be necessary. Yeah.
super cool. Super cool. Thank you for doing that work. And also, that person is also not married and doesn't have children, right?
Right, right, right.
So it's like, and I would say we can have a transformative experience at midlife where actually on the outside everything looks the same. I'm still married to the same man. I've been married for
Mm,
24 years. I have two children. We live in the same house. I live in the same city. And yet my experience of my life is completely different
yes,
because of the work
yes.
that's happened. So I want to normalize that. Like, big change, internal change, does not mean losing the things you've built in your life that are
Totally.
important. Okay, and
Yes.
simple practices. And look, people have, and I actually think there's an Enneagram difference in some of these things, but there's
Mm,
just um, starting to do a walk in nature without listening
mm,
to a podcast, without listening to music. Just
hmm.
you quietly in nature is a beautiful way to start.
Yeah,
It starts to, there's like the grounding piece that happens, there's the silence, there's noticing what thoughts you come up, and there's actually just that, that magic of being around trees. Now, I live in the middle of San Francisco. It's not the easiest. If I go out my
yeah.
door, it's like, okay, I'm like stepping over some stuff that's not so nice, right? And so I wish I had easier access. So
Sure.
for me, that's not always possible. So for me, daily meditation, and that can be a guided meditation with something from like Insight Timer. It can also be quiet meditation. You can use your binaural beats, if you like that for music. Um, Those are some easy ways. Journaling is, I think a lot of people do that, and it's wonderful, and it gives you some time to do your morning pages, right, where you're just sort of writing for 3 minutes about whatever comes out.
Yeah.
And, those are really simple ways to start. If I think, well, when we work in the Midlife Wisdom Circle, it can be really beautiful to work with different kinds of cards, like
Mm,
archetype cards or tarot cards, or if you like that, to pull a card and see what comes up for you. How does that help you make meaning of what's going on in your life? Really simple things to start to bring
yeah.
awareness to kind of that inner life. So those
I
are
love
some
that.
really
I love
simple
the
things.
reminder that it doesn't have to look a certain way, that everybody has their own, version of that with what their capabilities are, what their interests are. And I think, yeah, as a three can tend to want to do all of them. Like, I'm gonna do all of them. I'm gonna do them all, and then I'm gonna feel like crap if I don't do all of them every day. And then it's like, no, no. It can also depend on the week, right? Like I do Julia Cameron, when you were mentioning morning
Mm.
pages, I love her work, and I started taking silent walks because of her. And it is, I have to say, for those of us that are used to being quote unquote on all the time, or have some sort of input, or want to be thinking or be distracted or whatever, again, it sounds so silly maybe that a 20-minute silent walk can be like so disorienting at first. It was actually quite hard for me.
Mhm.
It sounds ridiculous when I say that, but ultimately it was like, I, oh, what do I do with my hands? Like, what am I don't know. Like, I was so used to having some kind of input at all times, and I've actually found that in doing that practice more often, it makes me not want to have something on all the time. Like, I used to in the shower listen to a podcast. I'm getting ready, podcast, like always information, 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 and I now find myself driving silently in the car, or like choosing not to turn something on as I've become more comfortable with it.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really interesting thing to notice, where you go, oh, now all that noise feels noisy. Like,
Mhm.
not that there's anything, all of that stuff is great and beautiful and content's amazing, but I don't need it on, I don't need the chatter in my mind all the time the way I used to crave it.
Mhm.
And so I'll be curious if anybody decides to give it a go. Like, be okay with it being uncomfortable too in the beginning, and that's okay. You don't have to love it at first, and you might not love it ever, but give it a chance and see how it evolves, because sometimes you might surprise yourself with how it affects all the other kind of moments in your life as well. So yes,
Yeah.
I love that reminder.
Yeah. So sometimes when I'm coaching people and we're working on some kind of practice around this and they're talking about how hard meditation is for them, I said, look, here's the secret that no one tells you about meditation is that actually if you can work through that part where it feels difficult, it actually it feels so good at certain point when you meditate that it's like coming home.
Mm,
And so
mm,
it's like you have to kind of get over that hump of the challenging part to feel like
mm,
um, it feels like the way I try to describe it is like it's like, and not every time you're going to meditate is like this, but there's this possibility, the sense of coming home, of total fullness in yourself, of like remembering what life is about. Like that's actually on the other side of that struggle if you can stick with it.
mm. I love that. Yes, that's so beautiful. Well, I'd love to end with, and all of this conversation kind of leads to this question, and it's the question I ask everyone around legacy, because I think, right, sometimes when we think of that word, we think of that heavy thing that we're, leaving behind, or, the big scary thing in the sky of, what is my life's purpose, and what am I leaving? And I like to think of it a bit differently, and just around the lightness of what it can be, and what we're trying to build towards, every day, and how we're showing up in our daily life. And so I would just love to know, for you, Nevada, what does building a legacy mean to you?
Yeah, I got kind of goosebumps when you asked me because it's like, I think at the deepest level, if I think about what all the work I'm doing contributes to, it's something about supporting this feminine leadership revolution
Mm,
that's
mm-hmm,
happening, that's awakening on the planet. And it's like, and I have a very little piece in that, right? But if I can bring a little bit more of the feminine. And by that, I mean the inclusion, the looking at wholeness, the relationality. Like if I can bring that into the teams I'm working with, great, I'm contributing a drop in the ocean. If I'm working with the Midlife Wisdom group and they're waking up to their own power about their own wisdom in midlife, I'm adding a drop in the bucket, right? It's like if I'm um, working with a foster youth and helping them really see the potential and empower them to put their voice out there in the world about what they need and be an advocate for themselves, that's being a drop in the ocean. So that's that's how I think of like the broader purpose. And as a three, the thing is like you don't have to do it all by yourself. It's not all on you, right? You can be part of a
Yeah.
larger mission. It's not like I need to go out and leave this big thing. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
that's a false belief that I as a three can hold, that I have to do it
Mm,
all. I
mm.
can be one of the stars in the sky. I can be a drop in the bucket. And so that's how I've been thinking and holding this idea of generativity or legacy.
I love that so much because I think, yes, we not only as a three, but just again, like what we are shown every
Mm,
day is that you have to be the person, right? Everything in social media and, the way our platforms showcase work or talent or content, it's always, it highlights a few, and the reality is there's so many incredible people doing so much incredible work, and the ocean can't be the ocean without all of those drops there. And so the reminder that your work is impactful in that way, and the ripple that is created just from the effect on that group that you have close to you, that's what's so beautiful to me too, right? It's, yes, you might be calling it a drop, but that drop spreads and continues to spread and continues
mm,
to spread, because in the women that are doing that work now, or the teams that are doing that work now, what does that mean generationally? What does that mean for, the folks that get to be in their orbit? And thinking about those things that you'll never even get to see necessarily, right? But how beautiful to picture that. So I just really appreciate your willingness to share not only openly about your own journey, but the wisdom that you've collected along the way, because I know that it's so helpful for others to get to hear and, maybe consider a thing or two that you're sharing here. So
mm,
just thank you for your openness and your generosity and your willingness to share.
Yeah, great to be with you.
All right. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, take care.
Okay.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.